Hello, my name is Father Charlie Bouchard, and I'm here to offer you some thoughts on the readings for the 16th Sunday in Ordinary Time so that you can know about these scriptures before you hear them at the Eucharist on Sunday. When you read these readings or when you hear them, it's going to be obvious that the main theme is about sheep and shepherds. This is an image that comes up very frequently in scriptures, both in the Hebrew scripture and in the Christian scripture. In today's first reading, there is a comparison of good shepherds and bad shepherds. The task of a shepherd, of course, is to unite the sheep, to keep them together, to keep any of them from straying, and to protect them from danger, especially from predators or outside forces. Elsewhere in the scriptures, we hear Jesus describe himself in the latter terms as being the good shepherd, the one who knows his own sheep and his sheep know him. The point of these readings, of course, is not about real sheep or real shepherds, but rather the message is spiritual, that there are pastoral leaders that we have who we consider shepherds when they fulfill their responsibilities to unite us and to protect us from dangers outside. Sometimes there are shepherds who scatter and divide. It happens with real sheep, and it happens in the church when we have leaders who are more concerned about themselves than about the unity of the church. For example, you may have heard that Pope Francis recently excommunicated Cardinal Vigano, accusing him of the crime of schism, or breaking the church apart because of his criticism of the papacy and the church. He and many others were removed from their pastoral roles because they were functioning as bad shepherds or not functioning as shepherds at all. And this analogy between shepherds and church leaders is obvious in many different ways to us today. For example, bishops still carry a crozier or a staff, which is a symbol of a shepherd used to guide. And when archbishops are created, they receive a pallium, which is made, it's a vestment that's made of lamb's wool, once again, to indicate that they are being clothed with this authority of a shepherd. There are a couple, or at least one disturbing thing about this analogy between sheep and shepherds and the church, and that is that if the bishops are the shepherds, then we are the sheep. And if you know anything about sheep, you know that they're not all that smart, and I'm not sure that they really do hear or pay attention to the voice of their shepherds all the time. I was in Ireland some months ago in the western part of Ireland, and if any of you have been there, you know that there are sheep everywhere, and that they pretty much do what they want to do. They get out on the roads, they stand in front of cars, they break out of their enclosures. So it's not very flattering, really, to be compared to those sheep, even though it's true, unfortunately, that many times we resist being shepherded into truth and into unity with the church. Yet these readings are particularly apt for us here in the United States today because we are in the middle of an election season and we are looking for a shepherd. The United States is, both in the church and in our civic life, plagued by division and polarization, or what St. Paul refers to in the second reading as enmity, that we have these bitter divisions among us, which any shepherd would be challenged in order to try to control that. And yet, even as we're talking about looking for a shepherd, a political shepherd, we have to be careful to distinguish shepherd with a capital S from shepherd with a small s. Our leaders, and especially Jesus, are these spiritual shepherds with a capital S. And yet our political leaders, especially the president, who are chosen to lead us, to draw us together, and to protect us from harm, are really, at their best, supposed to be a kind of shepherd for us. And many are, at their best, able to serve in that capacity. They're never going to be perfect shepherds. They're never going to be faultless or free from sin, but they are going to do enough of the shepherd's function to make sure that we as a country come together and thrive and are safe from external threats. But there is a problem about this as well, because I think sometimes we confuse the political with the spiritual, and that's clearly happening today. There are people out there who are really making their political beliefs or their political party kind of an idol. They are idolizing candidates and political movements and substituting them or comparing them directly to Jesus and to God himself. There's a book written recently by a man named Tim Alberta, and he is an evangelical pastor and historian. And he has been very critical of some evangelical movements that, in fact, do substitute political beliefs or political allegiance for faith in God. And he says that faith is not so much a matter of just believing something, especially abstract religious truths, but it is a question of where our real allegiance is. Is our allegiance, he asks, to Jesus Christ and to the Scriptures first, or is our allegiance to a political party that we think embodies the values that we hold, especially if they are Christian values? He makes it very clear in his book that, as he says, the book is entitled The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory. And he says in there that God has his own kingdom and no nation can compare to that. God has his own power and no amount of political, cultural, or social influence can compare to that. And finally, he says, God has his own glory and no exaltation or status of human persons can replace that. And I think what this suggests to us today, as we hear these readings about sheep and shepherds, is that the United States, even if it's our home, even if it's a wonderful country with a great heritage, is not the city on the hill that scriptures talk about. It is not Israel, the chosen people of God, even though we would like to believe that we are among those people. It is not the New Jerusalem, and above all, our political leaders are not anointed as shepherds by God. They have a lesser role, something analogous to shepherding, which we should value and respect, but it is not the same as divine control and divine sovereignty over all of us. So I think what these readings suggest to us today is that as we participate in this election year, we have to put faith first. We have to evaluate the Constitution and our political movements in light of the gospel and not the other way around. Tim Alberta mentions one pastor who said that his congregation could not accept a certain teaching because it was not consistent with the Constitution, an exact reversal of the way that it should be. And the second thing, which I think we understand from the gospel reading today, is that sometimes it's necessary for us to go apart, to go away, as Jesus did with his disciples, to find a place of silence and tranquility, to reflect on the demands of the gospel, and then to go back into this torn and difficult political environment and say, what does the gospel ask of me as a Catholic Christian? What does the gospel demand of us as a church? And what kinds of qualities and spirit and leadership should we expect of our elected politicians? So I offer that to you as a reflection for this week's readings on sheep and on shepherds and on the political turmoil in which we find ourselves. God bless all of you.